1954. A year that saw the start of a huge turn for monster cinema, going from the supernatural to the scientific. More specifically, involving nuclear origins, whether it involves giant mutant ants threatening to swarm the United States, or a nuclear fire-breathing dinosaur attacking Japan. However, 1954 also saw the introduction of what is considered to be the final addition to Universal's roster of classic monsters. Now that addition, of course, would go on to be known as the Gilman, as introduced in Creature from the Black Lagoon, directed by Jack Arnold, which not only saw a good deal of success upon release, resulting in 2 sequels within the subsequent years that followed, but also saw its title monster gaining enough popularity to be considered as a universal monster, standing side by side with the likes of Count Dracula, the Wolfman, and Frankenstein's monster, among others. The Creature from the Black Lagoon would even go on to receive an unofficial reincarnation in the form of Guillermo del Toro's Oscar-winning film from 2017, The Shape of Water. I've always had a soft spot for the Gilman myself, despite his roster of films being not exactly the best, which is to say that the first film, the subject of this particular essay video, is the only good entry in said roster. While I definitely think he deserved sequels that are of solid quality, if not on par with the first film, that doesn't change the fact that the first film still stands as a very worthwhile installment in not just the Universal Monsters catalog, but also in 50s monster cinema. Now with all that said, let's put on our scuba gear and dive right into this film in order to further discuss why that is the case. So to start things off, a quick little summary. The plot in Creature from Black Lagoon follows an expedition being led by a group of scientists, including but not limited to marine biologists David Reed and Kay Lawrence, after the discovery of a fossil from a mysterious prehistoric being. They venture into the Amazon in order to find the rest of the skeleton from which the fossil came, which brings them to the Black Lagoon, where they encounter a more living specimen. The film's title character, a humanoid fish creature that sees the expedition, especially one particular member, Mark Williams, as encroachers onto its territory, while also expressing affection for Kay, which further complicates things. And so the rest of the proceedings find the expedition in a fight for survival against the Gilman. The film essentially deals with the potential cost of humanity's endless pursuit for a greater understanding of the world around it. We see this group of scientists who seek to uncover an ancient specimen in the form of some fossilized remains of another Gilman, so that they could uncover how such a life form could thrive both on land and underwater. However, in this search for a revolutionary scientific discovery, they end up finding more than what they bargained for, but at a grave cost. And so, David Reed and company find themselves at odds with a living, breathing Gilman that has had a hostile encounter once before, which prompts the members of the group into enacting self-defense against the creature. The thematics aren't the most deeply explored or the most emphasized in films of this sort, yet the film does manage to bolster those thematics nonetheless with the events which follow. The characters, for the most part, again, aren't necessarily deep, but they function pretty well within the machinations of the story while also providing a pretty sizable amount of interactions and dialogue amongst themselves that makes them all come off as actual people, with the cast doing pretty well in portraying their respective roles overall. Some of these examples spring up thanks to Lucas, played by Nestor Paiva, the captain of the Rita, who mainly provides moments of dialogue-based levity, which is informed by his experience of roaming across the Amazon and seeing and hearing of the potential dangers which reside in it. However, the script ensures that this character's more humorous elements don't overlook or overshadow when the film needs to maintain its stakes. Now, to go into certain characters a bit more depthly, David Reed, played by Richard Carlson, stands as a voice of reason who, despite his desire to bring back documented proof of the Gilman's existence, comes to understand the toll that such endeavors to acquire that proof is taking on the expedition. Since they were all only supposed to go to the Black Lagoon to find fossils, David understands that the expedition is ill-equipped to deal with such a formidable being. So he ends up becoming a mouthpiece for the side of the expedition that's sticking with their survival instincts. By the end of the story, after a brief confrontation with the Gilman himself, David goes on to show sympathy for the creature as he leaves to succumb to his wounds. This is made apparent when he tells Lucas and Dr. Maya to stop shooting at him once the Gilman leaves his grotto to die alone. Throughout the story, and as shown in the film's final moments, David comes to understand that because of the expedition's search in the unknown, a being that was once living in peace is now dead as a result of its home being trespassed by those who sought a vast deal of knowledge for the sake of it. On the other hand, we have Mark Williams, played by Richard Denning, who sees the Gilman, or the expedition as a whole, as a means for financial gain and publicity. Mark is more or less the opposite side of the coin in comparison to David. Whereas one values the miracles of discovery in the world for what they are beyond any gain for him which could come of it, Mark, while sharing a similar passion, is still more focused on what can be gained out of such discoveries. Upon the discovery of the Gilman, he is driven and ultimately consumed by his desire to have the proof, regardless of whether it means capturing the Gilman, dead or alive. If it means desecrating the peace which the creature had thrived on for many years in order to get that proof. Once it becomes clear to everyone else that too many people are dying or getting injured for such an endeavor to be worthwhile, with David being the most vocal against him, Mark stands alone as the one member of the expedition who is just blinded by the potential for success in leaving the lagoon with a prize. And so, Mark's desire to not leave the lagoon empty-handed becomes his undoing, with the irony being that his quarry for which he was pursuing ends up killing him, leaving him empty-handed all the same. In between the two, we have Kay Lawrence, played by Julia Adams, the love interest of David, as well as the Gilman. While she stands as not too far off from being the Ann Darrow to the Gilman's King Kong, Kay has a little more dimension to her as a woman who cares about the well-being of others, even including Mark, but especially David. And she's even the first to express pity for the Gilman as not much more than an animal just trying to live his life, as well as an understanding that the creature isn't entirely hostile since he's fallen for her. Considering that he only just comes and grabs her to carry her away as opposed to just straight up killing her like he does to everyone else. However, she does recognize the potential danger which the Gilman poses as a wild beast lashing out at those who trespass in his home, so her being in fear of him, or rather fear of him inflicting harm on the others, and the uncertainty of what may come of him taking her, is warranted. But once the Gilman is gunned down, Kay, much like David, expresses empathy for the creature during his final moments. Now there is something which resembles a love triangle of sorts between David, Mark, and Kay, but it's ultimately not elaborated on all that much. When it is brought up, whether it's a moment where Mark asks Kay if she's worried for him as well as David before the two start diving into the lagoon, or when she's having a conversation with Edwin Thompson right before the Gilman breaks himself loose, it just comes as a bit few and far between, and it doesn't really amount to much in the grand scheme of things in the story. The conversation between Kay and Thompson details that Mark was the reason why she's even come so far in the field of marine biology, but even that doesn't really bring much to the table because there's just no question in anyone's mind that Kay is gonna stick with David over Mark by a landslide. Not to say that this love triangle subplot, or if one could even call it that, really makes or breaks the movie, but it pretty much would have been nice if it was elaborated on just a little bit more during this film. So while the characters aren't the deepest or the most compelling bunch, there's still enough to them in terms of work put into them where they function well overall in the writing side of things. But that's not all, for we have to come to the Gilman himself. Despite being not much more than an animal trying to get by in a world that beyond his home would no longer be suitable for him, the Gilman still manages to have a good deal of characterization going for him. When he's introduced, though not fully shown, the Gilman approaches Luis's camp out of curiosity, which results in Luis being frightened and throwing a lantern at him, thus prompting the Gilman to go on the offensive and kill both Luis and Tomas. This experience would give the creature reason to be against any humans that are to encounter him. However, even after the expedition arrives in the Black Lagoon, his abode, the Gilman starts to take a liking to Kay when he first watches her swimming. Due to him being the last of his kind, the Gilman seeks companionship with Kay, something which the rest of the expedition won't allow, whether it's for Kay's safety or for purposes which stem from greed. The Gilman finds himself in a battle with various members of the expedition for survival, killing most of the group, including Mark, and is ultimately done in due to his instinctual want for Kay. While it's not as complex of a tale of beauty killing the beast as what we've seen in King Kong, Creature from the Black Lagoon fits in line as a solid reiteration of such a classic tale, punctuating the tragedy of the Gilman himself, who was unfortunately slain due to his resistance against being caged up to be potentially exploited, as well as his longing for a companion to make himself whole that he can't have. While it is understandable for David Reed and company to want to defeat him in self-defense due to the Gilman's hostility towards anyone minus Kay due to his experiences with others, the film does end on a poignant note of how the Gilman's death didn't need to happen when it was all said and done. The Gilman story is pretty solid overall, and surely no sequel would dare to taint it somewhat, right? Right? Or whatever. Anyways, moving right along. So yeah, it's safe to say that the Gilman is quite the fascinating fish boy, and the film does really well in earning him his spot in the Universal Monsters roster. Moving on to the technical aspects, Creature from the Black Lagoon boasts some well-made underwater sequences which make the film quite the standout for its time due to how uncommon it was for even a Hollywood feature like this to feature such extensive scenes where the cast and crew are literally submerged. It does well in showcasing the exotic look and feel of the depths of the lagoon, or heck, any underwater environment for that matter, as a seemingly alien world, and there's also moments that make great use of that environment to add suspense for when the Gilman appears. The set design is also pretty neat and is able to emulate the exotic look and feel of the Amazon and the titular Black Lagoon, as well as the Gilman's hideaway, which is well realized as an eerie but exotic cave system which leads into a misty area with spots of water for the Gilman to come out of by surprise. And as far as the overall look for the Gilman is concerned, I mean, wow. Just what a well-realized creature we got here. The suit is very well detailed and realized, and the way that it allows for the Gilman to come off as a living being is just astounding. From the headpiece's ability to simulate the creature's breathing, to the suits allowing for a dedicated actor like Rico Browning to swim in it and pull off, making the Gilman's movements seem all the more natural. So the production value is there, and the film makes good use of the locale, adding to the suspense of when the Gilman pops up and does his thing. And the innovative underwater cinematography makes for some rather immersive sequences involving characters either exploring the lagoon from beneath the surface or confronting the Gilman. One can argue that a couple of these underwater sequences probably go on a bit longer than necessary, but they still work overall. So, to bring this essay video to a close, I wouldn't call Creature from the Black Lagoon the best film in the Universal Classic Monsters lineup, but I would happily call it a worthy entry in the catalog, and it's certainly a pretty damn good introductory film to the titular monster himself. It's just a shame that it's the only good Creature from the Black Lagoon film because, well, to be quite frank, the sequels aren't really much to write home about at all. However, we still have this film and the legacy that has endured over the years, to where the Gilman is now a pop culture icon, just like his fellow monstrous alumni. So, that counts for something. And with that said, I think this is a good place to end my video on Creature from the Black Lagoon. I'd like to thank you all very much for watching, and I hope you all found this video to be worth your while. If any of you fine folks are interested, I have plenty of other videos of the essay sort on other Universal monster films, among other types of monster films, so feel free to give those a watch as well. But as far as what I have coming up, feel free to follow me here in order to stay in the know on what is to come next. Once again, thanks for watching, and I will see you all later.